Welcome to Small Steps. My name's Seth Potts, and I want to show you how to use the IFERROR and IFNA functions. So if you've worked long enough in Excel and you've kind of fiddled around with some functions and formulas and tried some stuff out, you will have seen these at some point. They kind of look like this here or this down here. There's errors that come up, and they have a kind of a weird formatting, and they look a little odd. They have certain meanings to them, but sometimes these errors come up because you've just made a mistake in your formula. It's not calculating right, or it could be, in cases of these examples, it's normal for them to be in there. It just doesn't fall in line with the actual calculations. So could be something dividing by zero. It could be looking through a list of things and not finding the value that is trying to look up. So what these do, we'll start with the if error here. It's going to take that value, the calculation, and it's going to give you the option to say if an error comes up for that, what do you want it to say? So instead of this pound sign, hashtag NUM explanation point, we can change it to say something else. And honestly, if it's just a table for me, I'm the only one looking at it, I might not take the time to do this if I don't remember. If it's something I might be sharing, you probably want to have it changed over, because this doesn't mean anything to your command staff or whoever you're passing it on to. They might not know what that means. So for this first one, it's just a z-score. We talked about these before. It's calculating off this 4-week average and the standard deviation from that. So in my agency, my jurisdiction here, fatality accidents, we don't have that many. So when I have this stuff calculated out for a lot of our accident stats, things like that, this one's typically listed with this error because there's essentially no data here. It's just all zeros. It's dividing by zero. Everything's calculating that way. So I know this means, in general, this is going to mean that for a z-score, something like this, it's going to be a normal range. So it's basically going to be a zero. So instead of that, we will click up here. You see the formula, the function for standardize is what does that. Where we're going to put this is right between that equal sign and the formula we had written out there. So you start there, and we're going to start typing if error. Oh, let me try that again. Had the caps lock on there. If error, you kind of see it pop up here. So it's essentially going to have the arguments of the value you're looking for, and then the value what you wanted to say if there is an error. So we're wrapping this around the previous formula we have in there. So everything from that standardized to the end of its arguments and everything is going to be the value. So that's what it's going to be evaluating here. So for this formula that we have, if there's an error value, what do we want it to say? In this case, I know specifically this happens when basically it's a zero z-score, so perfectly in the middle there. So what I could do is put quotation marks, a zero, and then close my parentheses here. And it changed that over, the z-score over to a zero. So instead of that NA, if I pass this along to somebody, it still looks pretty boring, which is good. We like boring with certain categories like this. So, but it just cleans it up. So someone else looking at this, it's going to show that zero instead of that hashtag pound sign NA or a number, whatever it was. Now, the if NA is a very similar function. It does the exact same thing as that if error. It's got the same arguments, except it is more specific to the NA error that's down here. So that NA is more common, and I don't know if I've seen it anywhere else. It could pop up somewhere else, but it's typically with search functions like XLOOKUP, VLOOKUP, match, I think is another one. So it's something searching through a list, and if it does not find what it's looking for, not finding the proper match in that list, it'll give this NA. So quick example I made up, just had a couple crime types, and then I had a table looking up if it's a property crime or person crime. And so it's looking through that list, and it gets down to this auto burglary, and it's not in the list. Maybe it's listed different. Maybe it's listed as a theft from auto instead of auto burglary. Whatever the case may be. But if I'm once again passing this off to somebody else, or maybe I'm making a note for myself to update that list, I can go in here and use the if NA value or function and get that to list it out something a little different. So starts out the same. You're going to go click in that spot, and so the formula used was that XLOOKUP, and it's got the table is on another sheet it's looking up. So we're just going to keep that as our main value. So we're going to start typing in if in a, and just like the other one, it's got the same arguments. The value is going to be everything that was already in there, that formula we had already listed. So we're going to surround that with the comma here on this side, and then the value if in a. So maybe if I'm looking to just make a note for myself what to do, if these pop up, I'll go ahead and I'll make it all caps, update list. So this way it just pops up, especially if you have a lot of these, it might be able to update. And you can even go on and have it custom formatted to highlight or whatever if it lists a certain text that you're putting in here. So you can kind of expand on it even more if it's going to be a list you keep going back to. But so what we have up here is that XLOOKUP, and we just surrounded with this if in a. So if an NA error comes up from this formula we did before, I want it to say update list. And there you go. So again, it's kind of handy to have this if you're working with something that has errors that pop up, just for things like I say, dividing by zero, or calculations that might have an expected outcome of an error, but you just want to clean it up a little, have it listed a different way. So if error, if NA are two good ones to just keep in mind when you are working with formulas that might have those errors. If you found this tutorial helpful and would like to see more, click like and subscribe. The next video coming up is going to be going over a few of the counting functions.